According to the law of conservation of mass, when a chemical reaction occurs, the mass of the products should be equal to the mass of the reactants. Therefore, the amount of the atoms in each element does not change in the chemical reaction. As a result, the chemical equation that shows the chemical reaction needs to be balanced. A balanced chemical equation occurs when the number of the atoms involved in the reactant side is equal to the number of atoms in the product side. Let's take a look at an equation representing a chemical reaction. N2 plus H2. They are the reactants, and then the product is NH3. In chemical reaction, nitrogen reacts with hydrogen to produce ammonia, NH3. The reactants are nitrogen and hydrogen, and the product is ammonia. If we look at this equation, we can see that the equation is not balanced. N2 plus H2, N equals 2, H equals 2. And in the other one, in the product, N equals 1 and H equals 3. The equation is not balanced because in the reactant side there are 2 nitrogen atoms and 2 hydrogen atoms. In the product side there are 1 nitrogen atoms and 3 hydrogen atoms. The number of atoms is not balanced on both sides. To balance the chemical equation above, we need to make use of coefficient. A coefficient is a number that we place in front of a chemical formula in the chemical equation to make the number of nitrogen atoms equal on both sides. First, we place a coefficient of 2 in front of NH3, and the product is 2NH3. Once we do that, the number of nitrogen atoms on both sides is balanced. However, the number of hydrogen atoms is not balanced on both sides. We need to make use of another coefficient in front of H2. This time we put a coefficient of 3 in front of H2 to balance the chemical equation. And it is N2 plus 3H2. The equation above is now balanced. There are 2 nitrogen atoms and 6 hydrogen atoms on both the reactants and product side. Since there is no coefficient in front of N2, that means the coefficient is equal to 1. Steps to balance an equation. Practice always makes perfect. In general, to balance an equation, here are the things we need to do. Count the atoms of each element in the reactants and the products. Use coefficients, place them in front of the compound as needed. The steps are simple, but it is a process of trial and error. Let's take a look at few more example equation and technique that can be used to balance each one. This is a reaction between methane CH4 and oxygen O2, producing carbon dioxide CO2 and water H2O. CH4 plus O2, and then CO2 plus H2O. In the first one, C equals 1, H equals 4, O equals 2, and in the second one, C equals 1, H equals 2, and O equals 3. The reaction shown is a combustion reaction. A compound reacts with oxygen and produces carbon dioxide and water. The technique is to balance the carbon atoms first, then the hydrogen atoms, and the oxygen atoms. In this case, the carbon atoms are already balanced. So now we look at the hydrogen atoms. There are 4 hydrogen atoms on the reactant side and 2 hydrogen atoms on the product side. To balance them, we put a coefficient of 2 in front of H2O. CH4 plus O2. In the second one, it's CO2 plus 2HO. The hydrogen atoms are now balanced. Due to coefficient 2 in front of H2O, there are a total of 4 oxygen atoms on the product side. To balance the oxygen atoms on both sides, we put a coefficient of 2 in front of O2. The chemical equation is now balanced, CH4 plus 2O2, and the final equation is CH4 plus 2O2, and the other one is CO2 plus 2HO.